We did it. We're on World War II video number 5. We're getting there. We almost did it all. We gotta. I think we gotta do this one, and then we have the end of war, which is more of a Nuremberg trial video, and then I think we're good. I am not going to do one on the Holocaust, at least not yet. I may do one in the future. So we got two more of these bad boys, and I'm still in the bunker to get this done. So let's talk about the war on the Pacific side. So we just won the war in Europe. VE Day culminates as this end of the war, but now we're going against Japan. The Pacific battle is just different. There's this thing called island hopping, which we'll get to. It's just a different feel of the war. It's not a just land war. It's a lot of Air Force Navy type stuff that's going on. And the first battle I want to talk about is the Battle of Midway. So what we did is we decoded the Japanese messages. So the Japanese, the Germans, us, we had codes when we would speak to our own men, so the other people didn't know what we were talking about. What we used was actually the Navajo language. We actually used a Native American language that no one could decode. So we actually had soldiers that were from the Navajo Nation that would speak their language to one another, and nobody could crack the code, which is pretty awesome. There's a great movie called Wind Talkers. It's a little bit rough as far as violence goes, but it's a great movie to show you this idea that we use the Navajo language. But anyway, we discover the Japanese code. We crack their code, and we realize they're going to attack us at Midway. And so what we do is we set up a trap, and we destroy 4 of the Japanese carriers, which they didn't have a lot to start with. And in 6 minutes, we destroy these carriers, and we kill approximately 3,000 Japanese soldiers, and we take almost really very very few casualties on our side. We obliterate them, right? And we start winning these different battles. Now MacArthur, he's the guy that had the swagger. He actually gets told to abandon his men in the Philippines. The Philippines are taken over shortly by the Japanese, and then we have to basically retake a lot of these places back that were lost. But they're losing, right? The Japanese start losing, and their military commander Tojo resigns in disgrace. But even though they're losing all these battles, the Japanese don't throw in the towel. They want to stick it out. Matter of fact, there is a decree that takes place that there's a no surrender decree. Like, despite the heavy losses, the Japanese just refuse to surrender. But they're running out of stuff. So in that movie that I was talking about with Wind Talkers, one of the things I love about movies is historical accuracy. And in that movie, it shows a lot of the times that when they're doing this island hopping, the Americans to island hopping was basically there's multiple islands of Japan. It's take over this island, and now we're gonna hop to the next one, take over this island. As we're doing this, towards the end of these fights on these individual islands, you would see the Japanese come and attack American soldiers with just swords. They would run into a group of armed military men on the American side with machine guns or rifles or handguns or whatever, and they would just have a sword. And people are like, they were just really brave. They were also just out of bullets. Towards the end, the Japanese did not have a gun for every man. They used swords as a necessity, much like the Germans used horses as a necessity. It wasn't necessarily about bravery; it's about just the ability. They didn't have the same manufacturing that we did, and so towards the end, they were running out of supplies for their aircrafts. They didn't have the bombs to drop or the guns to shoot from their aircrafts, and they were running out of the fuel to actually use their aircraft. So that's why they did what was called kamikaze attacks. And this is where pilots would just slam their aircraft right into the naval vessels of the United States because they didn't have the ammo or bombs to do any hits. So they committed suicide by taking their plane and using their plane as the weapon. But the thing with that is, once the plane's gone, yeah, there it is. I mean, they can only do that so much. So towards the end, they weren't doing the greatest. They did not have the means to keep this fight going. But there was this idea of fight to the last man type of situation. So MacArthur plans an invasion of the Japanese mainland. This is going to be the D-Day invasion, probably times 1,000. Now the thing is about these estimates, it's you can tell it's hyperbolic. What I mean by this, it's not. It's hard to actually determine how much more this would have been than a D-Day invasion. Sometimes you look at these and it's like, was this just a another reason to use the atomic bomb or not, but it would have been a difficult invasion regardless. To make it a D-Day invasion times anything, I think is a hard sell. But it would have been a hard invasion regardless. Anyway, we're on a time clock here because Churchill is no longer with us because he was voted out and they're not helping us with Japan. We help them in Europe, but their country's pretty much devastated. They've been getting bombed since the beginning, right? Their towns are in rubble. They're not going to be able to come over and fight. Stalin is going to help us, but there's a problem here. Remember, I said Stalin is a monster of his own, right? Like he's the second world's biggest mass murderer. Okay, Stalin is, and Hitler's not number one. Hitler was like number 3 or 4. So we recognize that he's kind of a monster, and we know that his help is selfish. Like he's doing this for a reason. So he's invading China, kind of helping out China, because China is being invaded by Japan. And he's going to try to attack Japan. And our goal is to make Japan surrender before Stalin can get his grips on Japan. Because we don't trust him, nor should we. So not only are we facing Japan by ourselves, we have a ticking time clock that is Stalin over here that might try to take over Japan too, even though he's our ally. And so we're trying to get this thing over with quick. And so you got the idea that the invasion is going to cost us lives. You have this idea that we don't know how long the Japanese are going to hold out because they're willing to do kamikaze attacks, and we think they're going to do fight to the last man. And we have Russia that's going to try to sneak in and try to take over Japan and do whatever with it that they want. But at the same time, there's a thing called the Manhattan Project, which was the start of the development of the atomic bomb. And Truman, the only official in the history of our world to order an atomic attack on a civilian place, and it was civilian. These were cities. These weren't military bases. And you can argue, well, there's military supplies in them, sure, but you could pretty much argue that about many cities in the world during wartime because the cities are used as manufacturing plants for war, but civilians were killed by the majority of them. So we decided to use 2 bombs. We used one in Hiroshima. That was the first bomb that we used. And we strike the Asian population. About 80,000 Japanese civilians are dead. 80,000. One bomb, right? Which is at that time just, and at any time actually, not that time, any time, 80,000 people to die within one bomb use is just pretty impactful. And then we wait 3 days, and then we hit Nagasaki with another bomb, and that kills 75,000 people. And it's one of those things that gets, and we're going to debate in the class. Was it necessary? Was it moral? Was it legal? All those issues we're going to deal with in class. You're going to deal with in class, and I just get to sit back and watch, which is going to be fun. But yeah, we dropped both of the bombs, and then after that second bomb, we get word that hey, we're done, and Japan surrenders, which ends wins World War II. I mean, the World War II is done. Japan was occupied by the U.S. Under General MacArthur after this. During the 7-year occupation, MacArthur kind of reshapes Japan's economy by introducing free market capitalism practices, which led to actually an economic recovery in the country that was pretty amazing post World War II and after everything that happened. Additionally, introduced some liberal constitutional ideas, which I think even to this day is called the MacArthur Constitution. So MacArthur does kind of reconstructure that. The home front, we get back home. Unemployment did fall quite a bit during World War II. Wages rose. Farmers also got benefited from this. So there was economic benefits from this. I will say this: the argument that World War II is the sole reason we got out of the Great Depression is a foolish argument. There was no sole reason. There's not one reason they got us out of the Great Depression. It also would be incredibly foolish to say that FDR's plan by itself, the New Deal, was also the only thing that got us out of the Great Depression. It was the culmination of multiple things. But we had the end of the war. The atomic bomb ends the war in Japan. We're done with the fight in the Pacific, and now it's time to pick up the pieces. And that's what we're going to do is we're going to pick up the pieces in the next video when we talk about the Nuremberg trials and how this becomes let's say, the world standard of determining the moral implications of war. And those are big words, but we're going to talk about this next time. Peace out.